Hello everyone. In this lesson, we will learn how to read data from a file, how to write a data to a file, and also see how to view the data in the console. So let's get started. So I have created a folder called file. In this file folder, I'll create my job. Always try to fill purpose and description because that will be helpful in your future to understand your data. So we have to read a file which is located here, and this is a sample data which we'll be reading. To read this file we require component, and that component can be obtained through palette. So write just here t file and give a enter. So you can see all the component related to a file will be available here. So you can drag to the screen or you can write manually here t file. So either of the way you can create a component here. So I'll delete this one. So let's look at this component. What are the properties we have to give? So first of all, we have to give the path where the file is located. So just go to this place and open this file. So my file is a semicolon separated. If you see the data, it's semicolon separated. And coming to schema. So whenever you read a file, you have to give a schema of the file. So what is a schema? Schema is nothing but the structure of the data, like what will be the column name, what will be the data type, and either it will be null and not null, etc. Detailing about the row of the data. So here my column name is code name and country. Code name and country ID. Okay, so this is done. I have given the schema, I have given the file name, I have given the field separator. Now what you have to give is header as 1 and footer as 1, because header is the column name, this is my header and this is my footer. So footer starts reading from the bottom, so it will ignore this because this is a footer, and this will be not considered as a data but rather a column name. And limit, we don't have to give it limit as of now. We will be reading all the data. Now to view the data in the console, we have a component called tLogrow. So what we'll do, just right click here and row. So if you see here, the row has three components: main, reject and iterate. So what is main? Main will transfer the data from this component to other component, and in reject it will collect the data which is rejected, and iterate the data one by one. As of now, I'll just tell you about the main data. So connect to the main. Okay. Now run the job. So you see here we have saved the data. We can see the output data in the console. The other way to look data is just go to your component, go to table, clear, and run again. So you can get a better view of the data. So you see it's having a table structure, code name and country ID. And you see we don't have a footer here. So let's talk more about this component. So we see schema. So schema built-in or repository. In built-in, we have to manually get the schema. That is, we have to define the column names and data type manually. But in repository, we already created in the metadata, and that can be reused every time. So for repository, you have to create once and read many a times. That reading through a metadata, I'll show you after some time. But as of now, we will be reading to built-in only. If now I go to edit schema, again it will be reset. So again I have to create those columns. So I have created these columns. So this is this property is skip empty rows. So if we have any empty rows in our file, okay, let me give you an example. So if I have an empty file and I uncheck this and I run it again, so you see I get empty file, empty line. Now if I again check that component, skip empty row, so now you see that we don't have any empty lines here. Now just look into the advanced settings. What are the advanced settings? So advanced update for number. This will be useful when we output the data into a file. And so if we have some records we want to get separated, then can be a comma and decimal operator. That I will show you when I use a tOutput file delimited. And encoding, always remember to put encoding to UTF-8. So encoding means, like, suppose a data the name data is in German, so German has some special character. To read data exactly in our feed, always the best practice is to change encoding to UTF-8. Check row for each structure. Again, schema means this will check each row what we have defined in the schema, and check date, like it will check date according to the format what we have defined. Dynamic settings is disabled, but here we can provide, if it is enabled, we can provide the context and context values here which can be used later. Coming to view is the label format. Say I can give country details. So you see it is changed to country details. You can give a HTML code like You can use also HTML codes here. So it is always useful to change this label format that can be easily understandable by everyone. In documentation you can tell about whatever you have done in this component, or you want to give some special comments, highlight something, that you can do in documentation. Now let me give you an example for this check row for each again schema. So what I'll do is I'll just modify my data a little bit. I have just created a semicolon here and check each row. So what will this do is it will give a message that it is the data is against the schema. So now let's run our data. So you see it has given a warning like too many columns, and that row is skipped, but still we are getting all this 5 records. So this way, this advanced setting, this is very helpful when you have to check your data against the schema. Now let's see how this reject component. So what I'll do is now I have to capture that rejected record, which is this one. So I'll again create a tLog array and I'll connect the rejected row to this one. And I'll run my job again. So you see we have 5 rows here and one row is here. So this 5 row and this 1 row. So the rejected row is helpful in identifying the records which are rejected. Now we'll see how to put your data into a file. So I'll delete this one. And also one tip, when your job is completed, always go to this code section. So Talend is written in Java. So if there is some syntactical error or if there's something error, you can get some red lines here, and by clicking those red lines you can get what exactly the error is. So whenever you create a job, before running a job, just go to this code section and just see if there are some red lines. So as of now we don't have anything, and you can ignore this yellow warning. So our job is good. Now I'll create a tFileoutput template. So here also we'll give the path. Now let's run our job. So as we can see, it has rejected that record. So anyways, let's see the data. Okay, so we have this file and this is written in this country.out file. Now if I run this job again, what would happen? It will throw me an error. just let me run and see why. What does that error says? The file already exists. So what you have to do whenever you run such kind of job, go to advanced setting and uncheck this box, throw an error if already exists. Now run it again. Yes. So now our job is data is written to the output file. Now look at some advanced settings. Again change this routing to UTF-8. What I'll do is 1000 separator. I will modify my data and let's see how what will be the output. Split output in several files. So if I give it into, so in each file it will create 2 rows, so there will be total 3 files. Now what we'll do is we will run our job again and let's see. So you see we have created 3 files, and what it's done is, and if I go and check this record, so it has created 2 records but there is no delimited. So let me check. What I'll do is again okay, so it doesn't have okay, so you see after thousands it has created a comma for that. Now coming to view, as I told you, it's always best practice to rename this folder, so I'll rename it. Okay, so you can see the output. And let me tell you something about this outline. So outline this contains the local variables. So if you see tFileInput delimited, which is this one, condition name is tFile delimited. So it contains the error message and lines, the number of lines. I'll show in the usage of these local variables in another video, but as of now these variables are just like to give you more details about the data. So like how many numbers of lines were processed, what was the error message. All those things can be done using a component called tjava and using these local variables, but that we'll decide see in the later video. Now let's see what is metadata. So as I told you, so in the schema we have built-in and repository. So that repository reads the data from metadata, and metadata is always used for reusability. So go to metadata, file delimited, create file delimited. browse the file location. Set heading rows column name, so we have a footer, give as footer also. So we have our data here. Go to next. So now what we'll do is I'll deactivate this subjob. So how to read this metadata is just go here, drag and drop. It will ask you which component you want to use. So I'll select tFileInput delimited and to read the data. No, I don't have to do any other settings here, just connect it and run it. So this is because of the empty row. So you can see we don't have to do any settings when you go for a metadata. Just drag and drop here and then you can run the data. Another way is also through read the metadata, just activate. Go to schema, repository, again you don't have to give any settings here, just run the job. So 6 rows were transferred to continue output. So in this video we saw how to use tFileInput component, tFileoutput, tLogrow, and how to use the metadata. Metadata is useful when you know your schema is not going to change. So in that way you can always prefer a metadata. Thank you for watching this video.